Today I am going to show you a video in which we are going to see how we can use producers and consumers API to publish data to the Kafka cluster and how to subscribe that data from the Kafka cluster and get that data. So in my previous videos actually I have shown how we can set up the cluster, how we can set up the cluster using craft mode, and also how we can set up the cluster on a multi-node environment by using different AWS EC2 instances. In this video actually we are going to focus as how we are going to consume the data by the consumer group, and how we are going to produce the data by using the producer API exposed by the Kafka. So let's start with it, and for that we definitely need a working Kafka cluster which to which we can connect and send data, and then we will connect by using consumer to retrieve the data. So I will just quickly launch the instance, and okay, let's start with the instance launch. I will be using defaults as always. For the purpose of video we will take at least 4 gigs of machine, that's necessary. Key pair we will not use, and security group we will use something existing. Okay, I'll launch the instance. So let's go to instances, and let's verify the security group, because the idea is that I'm keeping all the incoming traffic for the purpose of video, so that I do not have any connectivity issues. But this is definitely not a recommended approach for the production or dev boxes in your organizations, and you need to allow only specific ports that are required for you. So bear that in mind, and just for this demo I have opened all the traffic. So let's wait for the instance to come up. Meanwhile, connect to the instance and install the Docker, so that we can run our Kafka cluster as a Docker image by using craft mode. Okay, so instance is up. So I will quickly run these commands that will just install the Docker, run the Docker, and install the Docker Compose. So it all these steps we have already performed in the previous videos. It's just that I am doing them quickly so that we can set up the environment. And so meanwhile this is getting set up, I will also show you the Docker Compose script. So this is actually a simple Docker Compose script by using the Confluent uh, image for Kafka cluster on by using the craft mode. These are just the simple environment variables that we are going to set. So this image is also available on the Confluent platform on the Git repository. Let me show you. If you go, okay, open this. So we can see that this is the sample script which has all the services available for the Kafka cluster, but for the demo purpose we are only interested in the Kafka broker node, which is still here. So I have already copied this over here, so we can just copy paste it. Okay, maybe from here only. So let's go to the instance. I think things or everything is set up correctly and installed. For that, let's try to run Docker process. Okay, Docker is installed correctly. let's create this docker compose file. Docker compose. So let me paste that script as it is. I'm not making any changes at all in the script. I'm just checking if there is something that I need to change. Okay, so you remember that in my previous videos I mentioned that we can run the broker as a controller, as a broker, or as both. So for this demo purpose we are going to run a single node on this EC2 instance, and which will work as both as a broker and controller, so we don't need two nodes separately as we were having in the previous lectures. So we will be using just one node which will act as broker and controller. And just to mention, controller is something that you can relate to a zookeeper node. So let me just save this. Let's run this server by I think that's the command for detach. Okay, it's this. Let me copy this. Okay, so it's downloading the images, and let's hope it is able to complete the download successfully and able to uh, run the Docker image for the Kafka cluster. So meanwhile it's running the Docker on the cluster on the EC2. Let me show you how we are going to set up the producer and consumer. So for that purpose we will use the IntelliJ IDEA. So I think it's done. Let's first just check this one only. So our Kafka cluster is running as a Docker image successfully. Let's jump to the IntelliJ IDEA. So in the IntelliJ IDEA, we are going to see like how we are going to set up the producer and consumer. So for that, the first step that I'm going to show is this is actually a simple Gradle project. You can start a Gradle project and simply create the consumer and Kafka producer sample classes. But before that you have to do one more step, that is to download the dependencies. For dependencies actually you need to write this implementation in your build.gradle file, that is the org.apache.kafka, that is Kafka client version 3.6.1. so this will actually download the jars for the consumer and producer API that we are going to use to connect to the Kafka cluster, send the data to the cluster and retrieve it. So let me first quickly go to this server and show you how it's going to look like. So we have this simple properties where we are going to set up the environment, that is the client ID. This can be any unique string. Then the bootstrap server is the host name of this machine on which we are running the Kafka cluster. So I will show you how I get this value. And then we have the configuration that we are going to acknowledge uh, the receipt of the produced data over the Kafka Connect cluster from all the nodes. And then we have key serializer and value serializer. So both these key serializer, value serializer, all these properties that I am showing, they are mandatory. If you don't provide them, definitely it will not going to work, because this is the minimum mandatory configuration that the producer config will need. And then I am after just adding these properties, I'm using string serializer and value serializer also a string, and then I'm creating an object of the Kafka producer and with all the configuration, and after that I'm just simply looping to 10,000 so that we can just produce some good amount of records. So this is a produce record object with the details like the name of the topic and the key and the value. So the topic we can give any name. The key is something that is that I am keeping same, but I am just changing the values again and again. So I am appending the value of I from the loop as a value, so that I can show that we are able to produce lots of values and send this data to the Kafka client. And then producer is actually running like calling the send function. This is actually an asynchronous function that will keep on sending the data by using multiple threads, and it's a non-blocking operation. And this is basically to get a higher efficiency when we are submitting lots and lots of data to the Kafka cluster. And then last line is just optional, like it's I have just added it to just join the main thread with the async thread, so that this loop is able to complete successfully, and the main method does wait for the completion of the loop. So it's just a very simple program just to produce records and send data, but before that we have to make some changes. So the main thing is that the bootstrap server. So bootstrap server is the basically the host name of the server where the Kafka cluster is running, to which it is going to connect and send data. So we are going to get this value from the configuration. So let me just go and see the host name over here, and the public domain name I am going to use. This is the public DNS for this machine on which the Kafka cluster is running. So I will just copy it, and let me go back to the code, and then I'm going to paste it. Okay, so this is the host name that I have pasted. This is the port that is going to be the default for this case, because in the configuration we are using this port only. So you can see this is the port that is exposed to connect to this cluster, and that's why we are setting up this port. So let me just quickly again verify that's the host name that is set up, and then I think we are good to go and good to run this program. Let me run this and see if it's working as expected. So Kafka producer code is running. Let's hope it's able to connect uh, and send data to the Kafka cluster. Can see that it is giving me error, and this is actually something that is expected, and I deliberately did this to show you what's the issue. So the thing is that we have added a host name over here, and this is simply not going to work because we are using this host name to connect, but this host name is something that we have not used in the Kafka cluster creation. We are using localhost there, so we have to replace all the localhost with this domain name, so that Kafka cluster is able to detect that the cluster is running for this host name. And one more thing that we haven't done is basically to make sure that we haven't created the topic. So topic is something, the Mayank 2, that is the topic to which we are pushing the data, but the thing is that we haven't created this topic before pushing data. So let me stop this, and let's go back again to the cluster, and then try to make these changes. So for that we will just stop this cluster first. So I'll just stop. Okay, I have stopped this cluster, and now I am going to make changes to this file again. Docker compose. Okay, so in this file, actually the thing is that we have to use the host name, local host. We have to replace the local host with this name. So let me try to make these changes. So starting from here, I will just simply paste the host name, right, and again with the, okay, and also along with the broker also we are going to replace, because we are using DNS everywhere. Okay, right, and over here also. I think that's sufficient. We have successfully replaced the local host and broker name with the DNS name, and let me just quickly save it. Let me again start the broker. Okay, broker is started in the background. Now we are just simply going to log in inside this broker, and just we are going to create the topic. So for that I will copy the broker ID, and with this command we are simply going to run get inside the broker. So let's just paste this. Now we are inside the broker, right? So for this we will first create the topic, and to create the topic we will be using the command from here. So let me first just go here, quick start. Let's just go with the command to create the topic. Okay, yes, so this is the command to create the topic. Let me just copy this, copy, paste it here. So we are inside the container, so we don't need to use sh. It should work like this, and instead of quick start event I will name the topic as Mayank, and bootstrap 9092. Okay, instead of, yeah, that's fine. Let me just try to, and then let's again go here. Okay, topic is successfully created with this command, and now I am again going to execute the producer. I hope it works this time. Okay, again I have to use topic Maya. Okay, great. It is now showing action complete, and that means that it is repeatedly printing action complete, because data is successfully published to the topic, and this topic, I mean data, I think all the data is successfully sent, but this loop has successfully run. It's just that due to this join method, it is not completing. So let me just stop this over here, and let me go to the consumer example now. And in the consumer, we are going to again connect to the cluster and retrieve the data. For that, I will change the topic name, and I need to change the host name too, because that's the old one. So let's copy from the producer, right? So just copy, and then let's just go to the consumer and paste it. And Mayank, okay, I will subscribe to the Mayank. So in the consumer also, everything is pretty much same. The configuration we are adding, that is the client that can be unique, the group id we have to provide, and the serializer, the key deserializer this time, and the deserializer for the value, that is the string deserializer I have used for key, and string deserializer for the value. It's a mandatory configuration for the consumer. And then we have to provide the bootstrap server, which is the host name of the EC2 box, and the topic name. And now I am just simply running a loop in which I am just going to subscribe the first. I will subscribe to the Kafka consumer topic, that is Mayan, and then I am just going to create an object of the consumer records, and for each record I am just going to print what are all the records, and it will poll in every 60 seconds. That's just the basic code to retrieve data from the Kafka cluster. So let me just run and see if we are just going to retrieve the same data that we have pushed. Yeah, so running, but is not consuming. Okay, the thing is that it is why it is not able to get the data from topic is because this is waiting for the data. Actually, we can subscribe the Kafka cluster in two modes. Either we get the data from the beginning, that is all the data that is available in the producer, we should be able to read it for the moment we connect to the Kafka cluster. And another mode is that we are connected, and now we are waiting for the new data to arrive. So that's why actually it's not showing up data, because it's polling and it's waiting for new data. So because by default this is what the connection mode is. So let's just while it's still running, let's go to the producer and send the data again. Now by running this, it will produce the data. So let's just run the producer over here. It will publish some data again, and okay, it's publishing now. Let's switch to consumer, and you can see that data it is able to get. So it is really fast. You can see that it has received all the 10,000 records in just within, I think, even less than a second. And all the data that it has produced successfully, it is consumed by it. Let's again once again try to run it. This time let's just remove this thing action complete, because we know that it's working successfully. And instead of just change some values so that we get a better view. And okay, let's just produce okay, so let me also show you how it's looking on the consumer side. So I'm just over here, and the data should have something like hello value. And let me run it again. So I have triggered the producer again. Let's see on the consumer side. You can see that, yeah, it's now we are again receiving the data with the hello. So if you scroll to the end, so it's so fast, and it has consumed all the data. So let me stop the producer and consumer here. So you can see it's just to give you an idea how producer and consumer APIs are working and how they are able to connect and produce the data, send the data to cluster and retrieve it. I will post this code snippet in the description section so that you can refer and try to run it on your own. Okay, thank you.